So I pulled out randomly from my container what drawing I'm going to do next. First one came up as Sonic. Yeah, I never drew Sonic in my life. I know, sue me. Then the second one came up as Roman theme. So Roman style with Sonic. I'm gonna let you know whether or not it was difficult on a scale of 1 to 10. So without further ado, let's get into it. Sonic is one of the most iconic characters in the world if you look at the gaming industry when it comes down to Sega. Literally, Sonic is the mascot of Sega. He is second towards the Flash. So I had to do his justice because if I fail, I'm gonna get rings hit all over my body, and I don't want that. First things first is to draw with the medium Wacom tablet, drawing on Adobe Photoshop. Normally I don't really draw in this type of style, so this one was a challenge for me. I spend hours and hours on trying to capture the likeness of Sonic. As you can see, these are the references that I use in drawing Sonic.
What? What the fuck?
The main one is the one right here. The hardest part, honestly, was the eyes. Just the shape of his overall brow, around that with his nose, and then his mouth section. Just that face section alone took me many hours to get done because it was just so hard capturing the shape to connect with the likeness of Sonic. Oh yeah, can't forget about those oval shaped eyes. Those eyes is not really something I normally draw in that type of style, so I had problems with trying to capture the likeness with that as well. So the strategy that I actually did with this was to just get the likeness as much as possible with Sonic, and then afterwards, once the likeness and the overall structure is complete, that's when I started erasing it and adding the Roman-like elements onto Sonic's features. Here are the references that I use in terms of getting the Roman style. Of course, this is free to access because I simply, like everybody else, got it from using Google Images. Just type in Roman illustration or Roman vector graphics, and then these popped up as reference. Another thing too that was a challenge was the feet. I normally don't draw a lot of illustrations from head to toe. In case you guys haven't seen it, or if you're new to the channel, go check out the other videos. You see that a lot of my illustrations are very face driven, like a bust from head to shoulder, or some of them from head to lower torso or to the knees, not so much from head to toe. So this one actually stands out. And that being said, even with the cartoon format, I don't normally draw cartoons that has like big heads, big hands, and big feet. And the more I was making this, the more I appreciate the style of Sonic. A lot of times we take it for granted. It's always the most simplistic cartoons are the ones that are the most challenging to make. Yeah, the bottom feet was extremely difficult just because you have to showcase the angle that he is in motion, but then at the same time show the upper area, which is the upper area of the actual shoe. And then on top of that, the foreshortening of the left feet. Foreshortening is the perspective of having certain limbs appear forward while other limbs appear smaller due to the depth of field. So one area is bigger than the other to give it that three-dimensional look. Eggman, funny enough, was not as difficult. That was an afterthought because I spent so many hours on drawing Sonic that I was like, okay, I can't just draw Sonic by himself. Can't have Sonic without Eggman, just like you can't have Batman without the Joker. Here are the references that I've used of Eggman. When I was drawing Eggman, I started to notice that he looks like Theodore Roosevelt. I really like the expressiveness of Eggman, especially with his teeth being humongous, like beaver teeth, especially his nose as well. Here are the reference that I used for Eggman's style as far as the Roman attire. So I gave him the toga, toga, toga look. Another added touch that I gave to it was to throw a shield and a spear. I did not look at reference for that, I just did that out of my imagination. This sketch roughly took 2 hours to make. Now after this, I took the file from Photoshop to Illustrator. So no longer am I using a Wacom tablet. This is when I switch over into using a gaming mouse. I recommend gaming mouse just because it's much more comfortable and it's much more intuitive because of the weight of the mouse. You are able to have much more of an easier time as far as cruising and navigating and able to make the vector graphics a lot quicker. I recommend gaming mouses rather than a regular Staples Logitech mouse. If you want to know the gaming mouse that I use, just let me know and I'll put it in the description below. Just to let you know, I am not sponsored by this gaming mouse. I'm just letting you know that this is what I use. Nor am I sponsored by Wacom tablet. Pen tool at this point, just tracing it over the sketch, and not just tracing it over, but making sure I'm adding the right angles to capture the lights and shadows when afterwards I'm going to fill it up with color. Sonic is a lot more detailed than what you imagine here because of the Roman style. So gave him the helmet, gave him the scarf, gave him the shoulder pad, gave him the knee pad, and then of course I just kept his iconic socks. Of course there was no socks during that time, but that's his iconic feature, so I left that, as well as his gloves. The trick in terms of using a pen tool is not to get everything on your first go, is to work in a fast rate where you're able to just cover the most you can, and then once you create that to a solid shape, then you can go back with the directional selection tool to fix the anchor point appropriately towards the sketch. That way you don't spend forever on the pen tool. Certain features are also added as well, like going back into it, extra lights and shadows, as well as fixing up some of the structures I have done to the original sketch. I prefer this methodology this way as opposed to doing everything on Adobe Photoshop, just because I like the cleaner graphic design look. On top of that, the file size is not as large compared to the file size on Photoshop if you are creating multiple layers of a full-blown rendered illustration. After completing the pen tool with Sonic, then I moved over to Dr. Eggman. Eggman honestly did not take that long, just because his exaggerated features, I was just able to easily capture and trace over the original sketch. The hardest thing as well was also his hands and the foreshortening. I honestly think I didn't do that much of a good job with that. It is really difficult to create that three-dimensional feel of having the hands look like it's about to touch somebody with the hands being bigger than the actual head. Once I traced over everything with the pen tool of the sketch on Illustrator, this is what I'm adding the colors. Colors, honestly, of Sonic was quite difficult. I'm not used to coloring characters where they're very saturated. Also, the Roman theme colors actually wasn't that bad to capture because I actually have a large library of different color swatches. And if you don't have a library of color swatches, you could just use the Adobe Illustrator defaults. If you go to the art library, they have different color swatches to choose from. And then from there, you could just save some of the swatches that you may want to reuse over and over. The more the colors was being filled up of Sonic, the more I started to get more excited. That's just how it is. I mean, of course, when you go through the tedious process of tracing over your sketch with the pen tool and everything is still black and white of an outline, once you start filling out the colors, that's when the colors for some reason just register in my brain that everything is starting to come to life and ends up looking more like the character that I'm trying to design. I was really excited with the integration of the Roman helmet that I created with that design with Sonic, and I wanted to have the helmet fused with his actual spiky hair. I added the Gaussian blur effect onto his eyes to make his eyes look more shiny. I didn't want to do a one-on-one on his shoes. I know his shoes is more detailed as he has a buckle. I decided not to have that, so it's like a hybrid between the simplistic Roman, I guess, shoes as they had at the time and mix it with Sonic's actual shoes. So just removing the buckle and having the Roman color palette is how I created the design of Sonic's shoes. Eggman actually has a tan. Color has a rich brown like tan feature, which I did not know until I started to color Eggman. And then also his outfit as well, being more of like a maroon and brown earth tone colors. I wanted to keep the same color palette with Sonic so that way they appear in the same type of style rather than having both of them in completely different colors. I wanted it to be more unison. That's the funny thing about Eggman. When you have characters that are this exaggerated, you really can't go wrong. They have such iconic features that even if you're not an experienced artist, you can still capture the likeness of that person or character. And then once I completed the color rendering of Dr. Eggman, then I went right into the shield. The spear and the shield did not take long. I literally just used the eyedropper of Dr. Eggman's color palette as well as Sonic color palette. Once I completed the colors on Adobe Illustrator, this is when I transferred the files from there to Adobe Premiere, when I added the background and added the color grading and the effects. I did not exaggerate the speed effect, I just kept it really minimalistic. But without the speed effect, it honestly does look kind of weird that he's not in motion. So by doing that, I just simply duplicated the same figure, moved it to back, added the blur effect to give it that look. Now I did separate multiple layers. Normally I don't normally do that. Normally I just have it as like one layer. But since I wanted to, I already had it in my mind to make Sonic move fast. So I had Sonic as one layer, Shield as a different layer, and Dr. Eggman as a different layer as well. So there's 3 layers onto this illustration. I did enlarge Eggman. I made Eggman bigger just to exaggerate on how determined he is to try to capture Sonic. Now on a scale of 1 to 10 on difficulty, 1 being extremely easy, 10 being extremely difficult, I have to give Sonic and Roman style a 6.5 out of 10. Mainly because of Sonic, he is very difficult for me to draw. I'm not normally entwined of drawing this type of cartoon style, so this is why I had to give it that rating. Put down your suggestions down below of different characters that you guys recommend me to design, and I'll take that into consideration upon future videos. Thanks for watching, and like all videos, I end it with stop animation in the end. Bye bye.